Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MVP show for January 31st, 2021, with Brennan Miller and Dan Pizzanti. I'm John Vicari, and it has been quite a week. We are in a lot of things, pretty much away from the sports field, but it has been busy as per usual, and we have a lot to talk about today. We have quarterbacks on the move. We have the MLB hot stove that's heating up, and usually wouldn't be around this time, but is because of the pandemic-related offseason with MLB. Lots to get to, but where we start, and I think unfortunately, is that we have to address both Brennan and Dan's team faltering in the... we don't have to, but I think we should. In the championship games, the Buffalo Bills and the Green Bay Packers, one game away. I think both Brennan and Dan are going to have different outlooks on how they would judge this season overall. Dan, you go first with the Bills. And I think they played tough for, I would say, 2.5 quarters. I think the main problem was, as I said last week, not stopping Kelsey, and Josh Allen took too many sacks for a lot of yards. But this Bills team, I think, played tough to a point, as I said, and I think you got to be proud of them.
Yeah, I think you have to be too. I mean, last week when the Bills started out 9-0 with a lead, I was like, wait a minute, are we actually going to win this game? And then, of course, not what happened. I mean, the Chiefs are an incredible football team. I really don't think anyone can beat them, which we'll get to next week. But, I think that no one could have stopped their offense. It's not really Josh's fault. But, the Bills really need to get a run game this offseason to figure out how to be better than the Chiefs. I think that's their main concern. But as far as this season goes, 13-3, 7-1 at home, 6-2 on the road. They won 6 before losing the last one. Well, they won more than 6 in a row, actually. Before losing the last one, it was a really great year for the Bills, and they really should not be upset with the season at all, but look at it as something to build off of. And also, while I'm here, I mean, what was almost worth so much money is now. I mean, I feel like I have to get rid of it now. Like we can't.
You have to.
It needs to go. I mean, it was almost worth so much. But anyway, it was a good season for the Bills for sure.
That's sad, man. I usually put mine in the shredder, actually, so I don't have to, that's make it rain, Dan. There we go. Yeah, I felt bad for the Bills watching that game. I really did. The team I felt worse about, though, was my Green Bay Packers. I would like to bounce back to the show that we did just prior to the games going off, and I said a few things. I said that the game is going to be dictated by turnovers, first off. The Bucs were best in the last 6 games at causing them. The Packers were best in their last 6 games at not giving the ball away. And that was the story of the game. But the issue with that being that the Green Bay Packers, off of the 3 turnovers that they caused, only scored 6 points. They picked off Tom Brady 3 times in the second half, and Jair Alexander had 2 of them. He's going to be next year probably best quarter in the league at this point, because we saw Jalen Ramsey get toasted. No biggie. I just have to ride off the successes of the Packers because of the defeat. So the Packers picked off, the GOAT, Tom Brady, 3 times, and then only scored 6 points. And you can't do that in a game. The Packers had so many opportunities to come out and win this game. Kevin King had one of the worst defensive performances of any defensive player I've ever seen play football in my lifetime. He got toasted for 2 touchdowns over the top, including the one with 6 seconds left on the clock just before the end of the second quarter. There was a lot that needed to be done differently if you're the Packers. They had some good performances. I mean, Christian Kirksey had one of the best performances of his career. I think PFF graded it as the best performance of his career. But then you had Kevin King and Shandon Sullivan on the backside who could not defend the third down sticks for their lives. Another thing that I said before the game was that third downs were going to matter. The Packers gave up 2 third downs. The Rams were 2 for 8 on third down in the divisional round. Through the first quarter, Tampa Bay was 6 for 6. They did not miss on 1 third down. And that really came back to haunt Green Bay. They should have won. They absolutely should have won, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Just because I'm incredibly sad. I was just getting over this loss, and now I get to talk about it again. So that's fun. Woo!
Yeah, I think we had to open with it. Obviously, it's not maybe the most in the news story right now.
John.
But you had to touch on. Hey, you guys had a better. We talked about the Giants season ending in the beginning of January, right? If you guys could talk about your season at the end of January, I think it's a good thing. And as I mentioned at the top, Dan, more a positive outlook, where Brennan, last 2 NFC championships, 1 game away for 2 years in a row, and unfortunately Green Bay, not in the Super Bowl. It will be
John.
It will be Tampa Bay hosting a Super Bowl for the first time, and it's not the first time. I thought it was, but it's not the first time that a city that has the team is hosting a Super Bowl, but it's the first time it's at the home team's venue. So the LA Rams did go to a Super Bowl, but it wasn't where they played. I thought that was very interesting, because I always thought it was just the home team never played in their home city. Not the case. The home team playing in their home venue for the first time. And of course, it'll be Tampa Bay versus Kansas City. And next week will be our Super Bowl preview show. We're going to break down every aspect of this game. And this week's sort of the buffer week, where you don't go too deep into it because it's too early, but you got to mention from last week the championship games, which we did. And we're going to transition to more football, because it was a very busy last couple of days and a lot of quarterback news. Late last night, a trade broke, which I think maybe would be one of the biggest trades in a while. I think this is getting really overlooked in a way. Both of these guys, Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff, are now swapping teams, and both of them were first overall picks at a time. And I don't know, I can't say that I've never seen this. I'm sure it has happened if you go back in the archives, but it's very rare that a team and another team swap quarterbacks. The official trade for it is Matt Stafford to the Los Angeles Rams, Jared Goff, a 2022 and a 2023 first-round pick, and a 2021 third-round pick will be going to the Detroit Lions. And maybe you guys will disagree with this. I think this benefits both teams in a way. You got Stafford. He's 32, has 2 years left on his deal with the Rams. Right now, as it was reported, the Rams aren't looking to extend that contract as of right now. But the Rams are in a win-now scenario. They got a lot of great offensive pieces, and probably, I would say, the best defensive player in football in Aaron Donald on the other side, and a secondary that's getting better. The time for the Rams to win is right now, and if they think they needed a better option than Jared Goff, well, they got out and got it in Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford, on the flip side, does have 3 postseason appearances, no wins, unfortunately, with Detroit, but he's gotten there before, and people would argue that he's really never gotten a playoff team. He's gotten Megatron, Calvin Johnson, a great wide receiver, but those teams didn't have a defense that could win big games. On the flip side, Jared Goff's only 26 years old. People forget, he went to a Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams. He starts a 4-year, $134 million deal, 110 of that guaranteed. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler, and he gives the Lions time to rebuild around him. It isn't a win-now scenario in Detroit. I mean, it really never is, but they don't have to feel pressured that they have to piece this together because they have Stafford and he's aging. They could sort of start from square one and start building with Jared Goff. We could argue if he's really a franchise quarterback and a guy who could win playoff games, but as I mentioned, he did do that in Sean McVay's system and were a 1 win away from beating, or a couple of points away, I should say, from beating the Patriots in a Super Bowl, and they were the NFC champions. It feels like a long time ago, but it did happen. Do I think Jared Goff has declined since then? Absolutely. But to think that he won't be a good quarterback in Detroit, I think is laughable. A lot of people want the Rams, or have talked about how the Rams won this trade. Brennan, your eyes lit up when I said that it was pretty much equal. Do you think both sides benefited from this deal?
I do, actually. I think that this is good for both sides. I think that, like you said, the Rams are in win now. And who better to get you there than Matt Stafford? I mean, the man's got a cannon for an arm. He's one of the grittiest football players to ever play the game. I think he has probably the best NFL mic'd up moment when Detroit needed to go for two. I forget what game it was, but they needed to go for 2. He had broken his left shoulder. Obviously he throws with his right. He literally just dislocated his shoulder, and he goes, no, I can throw the ball. Get me back in there, and throws 2-point conversion. Lions win. The guy's got grit, and that's what matters. In LA, I think he's going to thrive. And I think the Rams didn't give up a ton. Like, yeah, you're getting rid of Jared Goff, the guy who has a absolute monster contract and shipping that out to Detroit. And then the picks, yes, you're giving up 2 first-round picks. What would those picks probably have been spent on anyway? I mean, you have to imagine that one of them is going to be a quarterback if they don't have the confidence enough in Goff where they're willing to give away picks for him. I do not hate this for either side. I think Detroit is going to get they get a workable quarterback for the near future in Goff, and then they have the potential in those 2 first-round picks to go out and get weapons on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they're weak all the way around. Patricia came in, he's a defensive guy, didn't really improve the defense at all. And they don't really have a ton of weapons on offense, but I think both those first-rounders go to weapons on offense and try and get someone who Goff can get the ball to. And the Rams, they're future firsts. They're future firsts. They're not first rounders this year. Like, yes, I understand they don't have any first rounders this year anyway, but they're picks from 2022 and 2023. The Rams are going to have time to be able to flip more guys to try and get those first round picks back. Like, they're going to have 2 years of contracts expiring where they're going to have the potential to trade guys away and try and get first rounders. I don't hate this for either side. I think it helps both teams. Obviously, Detroit a little bit further down the road, but it helps the Rams right now, and they need it because the defense didn't step up in the divisional round this season, and they need more weapons on offense. I think Stafford is going to be able to distribute the ball even better than Goff was. That being said, he's not a game manager quarterback like Goff has been assigned this role as a game manager. Stafford's a guy that can make plays when he needs to, and I think that helps the Rams for sure.
So Adam Schefter tweeted out 4 hours ago that this is the first time two number one overall draft picks have been traded for each other in the common draft era. In 1978, O.J. Simpson for 5 picks, one of them became the number 1 pick. So that was the only other time that this has really happened. I didn't want to bring him up either. It just kind of happened. Anyway, this is definitely a trade that strengthens both sides. And honestly, I feel great for Matt Stafford. He finally gets to get out of Detroit, a team that has been, I can relate because I've had a team that's been, irrelevant for forever. The Lions are really the epitome of that. They really have not done very much in that division in my lifetime, in our lifetimes. I don't remember. So I'm happy that he might get out and maybe experience some of the playoffs with Sean McVay. And I think you guys, hit everything else with him, the personnel decisions and some of the good stuff there. But honestly, one of my big takeaways is I feel good for Matt Stafford.
Yeah, and as Brennan mentioned, that video, which you could probably find on Twitter, that was the Lions versus the Cleveland Browns. They were down 6. Stafford somehow completed a pass down the field and pretty much separated his shoulder. And as Brennan mentioned, it was on the opposite hand, not the throwing arm, I should say. And then he wasn't supposed to come back in. They're like, no, on the sideline. He goes back in, throws a touchdown, and one of many Cleveland Brown losses, which probably stung, and they lost by 1 point. And that was a couple of years ago, but just to give full context for that video. And Dan, with a key stat there, because I talked at the top of this segment that I'd never seen a trade like this. Technically, you did get one, but of course, 1978, way before our time, but someone notable, definitely. I didn't think we drop. Yeah, I didn't think we drop an O.J. Simpson the first 20 minutes of the show, but that's why you tune in, right? In terms of another quarterback that was in the news, is Deshaun Watson. I think this is been a very interesting case as it's unfolded with him because he's unhappy in Houston. Point blank. He hasn't publicly come out and said that, but reports say that he's told the team that he wants out. The problem with that is that he has, well, 1, a no trade clause. But 2, he signed and extended his contract in September. That for 4 years, but the way the contract is dealt, he could be under Houston Texans, could be an employee of the Houston Texans until 2028 due to franchise tag and things of the like. So he's sort of locked in between a rock and a hard place because if the Texans don't want to deal him, and why would they deal Deshaun Watson? He's got nowhere to go. He's locked into this deal. And I'm all for athletes trying to get out of situations that they don't want to be in. I understand that. But he has a contract. There is no way to get out of it besides sitting out, which he, in his right, can do. He could just sit on the sidelines and Houston will continue to pay him. He has that clause, but he can't be on another NFL team unless Houston decides to trade him. And that's tough. And also Watson can't be dumped off to somewhere he doesn't want to go with the no trade clause. It's an interesting scenario. And they brought in a new coach and a GM, and this is where I think the disagreement stems from, because no one feels good after you go 4-12 like the Houston Texans did. But the Texans brought in Nick Caserio, I think I got that right, and David Culley, who worked for the Ravens as an offensive assistant, now brought in to be the head coach of the Texans. And Deshaun Watson either disagrees with both of those hirings or felt that he should have been in on the hiring process when deciding who was going to be the future of this Texans organization in terms of a management standpoint. He felt disrespected. Nowhere in his contract did it say that he should get a say on it, but he is your franchise quarterback, and maybe him and owner Cal McNair talked about this. This is all speculation, but may have talked that when this comes up that Watson gets a say, and obviously he didn't. But Dan mentioned it last week. Watson has a lot of landing spots, but he made him his MVP of the week because Deshaun Watson could become a New York Jet. He has shown interest that he wants to go to New York, or doesn't completely eliminate it like NBA players do. He's willing to come to New York. He's willing to come to the Jets, which is pretty much the Northeast equivalent of the Houston Texans, I would say. But he's willing to become a New York Jet. My thing is, I don't know what Jet fans expect. He comes to the Jets tomorrow. They're not a playoff team this year. They're the Houston Texans. They'll go 4-12 or 5-11. Not saying you can't build towards that, and it's a great thing to solidify who your franchise quarterback is, because they still don't have one, if you don't think Darnold is, and build around a Deshaun Watson. But he's not going to solve all your problems. Now, should he come to New York, and do, of course, Jets fans want him? Yeah. He's a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. Some would argue top 5. I would keep him in the top 10. He's really, really good, but he doesn't solve any of your problems. And there's a lot of other landing spots where he does. I think Deshaun Watson goes to New England. They're a playoff team. They are. I know Dan does not want that to happen, but if that could be a possibility. If Deshaun Watson goes to the Miami Dolphins, another team in the AFC East, they could be a playoff team. They were close this year. Now, I think Tua is the future there, but obviously he's gotten off to a rocky start. So there's many places to go, but what I want to get across is that I don't think going to the Jets solves all their problems, but there are other landing spots out there. But I value the fact that Deshaun Watson thinks of New York, and especially the Jets, so highly. Brennan, Dan, your thoughts on this, where you think he's going to go, and just this whole situation, because, as I mentioned, you all for players' rights, but in this scenario, in the contract that he signed in September, he sort of took that away from himself.
Okay, first off, I just want to ask a theoretical here. What would a team have to give up in a trade to get Deshaun Watson? Because we just saw Matt Stafford also timeout. Matt Stafford's only 32 years old. I feel like I've been watching him since I was like literally 2 years. Like, this guy's been in the league forever. Regardless, a team just gave up 2 first-rounders, a third, and a quarterback who is probably middle-of-the-road quarterback, not a guy you're going to build a franchise around, but not a guy that you can just kind of get rid of. They gave up all that for Matt Stafford at 32 years old. How much are you going to have to give up for Deshaun Watson? I would have to venture and say probably, 4 first-round picks, maybe 3 with some stuff thrown on at the back end, maybe a few contracts to dump. That's crazy. And I don't think that the Jets are going to be willing to give up that much. I mean, is it good for the Titans, or not the Titans, excuse me, the Texans, division rival, that's where it was. Is it good for the Texans to be able to give up a guy like that, and not even like be able to get above a lot of teams, but just be able to get to the same level as far as draft stock goes, because Bill O'Brien went and absolutely destroyed the ability for the Texans to get good players for the next, 3 years, 4 years. Yes, it's great for the Texans to be able to try and get that draft stock back, but you're going to have to give up a franchise quarterback to be able to do it. And if you're Deshaun Watson, why the hell do you want to go to the New York Jets? What are you doing? You're going from the Houston Texans, a team that made the playoffs, not this season, but the season before that, and you want to go to the New York Jets? When was the last time that the New York Jets were competitive and had talent to build around a quarterback? I mean, I think Sam Darnold is going to be a guy who leaves the Jets and then has some mild success. He's going to be like a Fitzpatrick, jumping from team to team, having success, and we, until he retires, are going to continue to go, Could Sam Darnold have been a good quarterback if he were, say, in the Patriot system? Who knows? But it's not going to be with the Jets. It doesn't make any sense to me why you would want to go from the Texans to the Jets and think that there's going to be any kind of success there. What's going to happen? He's going to get traded. The Texans are going to get all those picks back. They might even trade J.J. Watt, because I think a report came out yesterday that said he's thinking of trying to leave Houston, and a lot of people in their locker room say that they think this is going to be his last season with the Texans as well. So yeah, they'll get back the draft stock that they lost, but they're losing two generational talents in J.J. Watt and Deshaun Watson in the process. It makes no sense for him to want to move to a bad team. Regardless, I just don't understand it from really either side. I mean, I guess I kind of understand it more from the Texans side, where they're just trying to catch up to the rest of the teams as far as being able to acquire players in the near future. But what is Deshaun thinking?
I don't even know where to begin with this. You know, in basketball and in baseball, I feel like things are a little different where, especially in basketball, if you get one really good player, you can maybe be a playoff team. Obviously, baseball is a little different than that. But, you know, for the most part, if you can make a trade and bring in some pitchers or someone who's key missing in your lineup, you're going to be pretty good. But in football, I mean, I think we've seen that huge trades in football, especially when you give away your entire future, are not always the best. If you want long-standing success, you're going to have to build that. You're going to have to draft that. I don't know that you can trade for you know, in the Jets situation, for a win-now situation, you know, when you're not that good to begin with. All of that being said, I don't know how much the Jets have. I mean, they do have a lot to lose, but like in context of their history, let's just talk about Vinny Testaverde, Chad Pennington, Brett Favre, Mark Sanchez, Geno Smith, Fitz, Josh McCown, and then Sam Darnold. Those are some of the Jets' Week 1 starting quarterbacks of the 2000s, and that is just unbelievable, isn't it? So maybe just to get back on track, that they may want to bring in a Deshaun Watson, you know, so they're not thinking about the ghost of Mark Sanchez anymore. But it's such a disaster to think about him going to a team and potentially not being happy. Also, just to say that all of the number one landing spots for him are in the AFC East does not thrill me. If he goes to the Jets, it'd be hilarious. If he goes to the Dolphins, I'll be like, all right, whatever. But if he goes to the Patriots, I'm going to be really, really angry. But we'll see how that goes. There's obviously a lot that needs to happen before that can be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's other candidates out there. Even my Giants, you know, Dan Orlovsky on ESPN said that, oh, you should give Daniel Jones away, Evan Ingram, a first-round pick, bring in Deshaun. No, I'm sorry. I don't want – I think Jones is a franchise quarterback. Sorry, Orlovsky. But, yeah, I mean, almost I think I saw a Bleacher Report article in which it was the top 13 landing spots for Deshaun Watson. That's almost half the league. Thanks. Like, I mean, Brendan, you're mic'd. You're muted.
Yeah, that's on me. For some reason, we decided that right now is a good time to vacuum in my house.
Oh,
so I'm gonna mute myself when I'm not speaking. There are 16 teams that don't know who their starting quarterback is going to be next season. That's insane. Like, the Packers may be on that list. Aaron Rodgers came out earlier this week and squashed anything that, like, he essentially said that this offseason is no different than any other offseason. The Packers aren't going to unload him off this offseason because then it's going to take up too much cap space. There's a whole bunch of reasons the Packers won't give up Aaron Rodgers this season, and that's a whole other conversation. But there are 16 teams in the league that don't know who their starting quarterback is going to be week 1 of next year. And that is absolutely insane. That's half the league. This is going to be the greatest quarterback carousel that we have ever seen, especially with 4 quarterbacks that are ready to go in the first round of this year's draft. It's going to be awesome this offseason, but obviously a lot of question marks still.
Yeah, new faces and new places for the quarterback carousel. And we mentioned the swap of the QBs and where Deshaun Watson's future is going to be. And this, I don't think, will have a resolution tomorrow. I mean, hopefully it does, so I'm wrong, I guess. But this may play out over the next couple of weeks, couple of months. It'll be interesting to see where Watson winds up. But now we'll go to something that's been in the news as well, and that's the MLB hot stove. And a huge deal, and I think it was overshadowed, unfortunately, because of this quarterback swap. But you have a franchise player in Nolan Arenado of the Colorado Rockies now going to the St. Louis Cardinals. He got swapped for a couple of prospects. It's not official yet, so these are just some of the names. Austin Gomber is going to be he's the main name attached to this, and John Torres, Jake Woodford, and Angel Rondon, I think I got all those right, are rumored names surrounding this, and it will be official hopefully today because the MLB Players Association has to sign off on it, as well as the MLB, just because of the money and the logistics involved with this deal. And you look at the money in this deal, it's absolutely nuts. Colorado has to send $50 million to cover a portion of the $199 million remaining on Nolan Arenado's deal. And an additional year, this is from the Cardinals, they're going to give Arenado at $15 million. So he's getting paid no matter what, but he signed an 8-year contract extension with the Rockies in 2019. This wasn't 3-4 years ago, similar to Watson. They newly upped him. Instead, they're going to deal him because Colorado's future is looking bleak and they want to collect as many prospects and picks as possible. And they're trading their franchise player who they thought was going to be a forever Colorado Rocky. Instead, he goes to the Cardinals. I don't think it makes the Cardinals NL favorites. They're definitely favorites in the Central, and that's not due because they're stacked by any means. It's just because the Central is really weak this season or this upcoming season. But what are you doing if you're Colorado? I understand there's money and maybe you don't see a future, but to bring people to the ballpark, I mean, Trevor Story now becomes your default franchise player, and we'll see if they give him his money and extend his contract. No one knows. So if you're the Rockies or a Rocky fan, you have to be laughing at this deal in terms of what you got in return, what's not official, but what's pretty much rumored by MLB insiders, and also giving up your franchise player. A lot of people in Colorado bought Arenado jerseys. Hey, I bought this in 2019. He got an 8-year extension. You would think he's home for a long time. Instead, he's shipped out to St. Louis. This might, I don't think it will, but just because of history, St. Louis in recent years have gotten bit by huge deals. They gave Dexter Fowler way too much money. They re-signed Matt Carpenter after a great 2018, and his 2019 and I know short, but his 2020 wasn't great either. So I don't think this will bite them on the behind, but you know, St. Louis has a history in these last couple of years of signing deals that they later on regret. I don't think it's going to be the case with Arenado. He had a not-so-great 2020, again, in the shorter season, but from 2015 to 2019, he was third in wins above replacement, just below Mike Trout and Mookie Betts, 4 position players. So you're getting an ultimate stud for St. Louis. And as I mentioned, I don't think it makes them favorites in the NL, but in the Central, it's the Cardinals to lose. Brendan, I saw your facial expressions again with what the return is on this deal. What are the Rockies doing?
Yeah, and a few things in what you just said. Trevor Story might get traded as well. So you just have no clue what the Rockies' thought process is. Up until this point, the biggest deal for any NL Central team in free agency was signing Jock Peterson to a 7-year or $7 million, 1-year, $7 million deal. The combined NL Central, up until this trade, had spent $12 million on every free agent that they had signed, every team in the NL Central. And now all of a sudden we have a guy who is the best defensive player in baseball, period. The best defensive player in baseball. The guy's won 8 Gold Gloves. He's won 4 Platinum Gloves as the best defensive player in the league. And to see him just be shipped out to St. Louis with the Rockies giving up $50 million to get him out of there as well makes no sense. It makes no sense. Why are you giving away this cornerstone player of your franchise? Not just, the cornerstone player, he also plays the hot corner at third base, which is a pretty hot commodity at this point where there's not a ton of great third basemen in the league that you can go out and get. It makes no sense. I saw a lot of people were actually upset that his projected batting average on Fangraphs this season went from 293 to 263. I think people were forgetting that he plays in Colorado, so the batting average, goes up a little bit. But he's still a guy that can mash the ball wherever he goes, and he's a guy that has the best defensive glove in the major leagues at any position. It makes no sense for them to ship him out. I get that, maybe you're trying to get rid of a lot of money off and try and get under the luxury tax threshold, but again, doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know. I just love that the MLB hot stove is starting to heat up here. We saw Ottavino kind of started off going to the Sox from the Yanks, the first deal that they've made in a long time. And now obviously Arenado is the big deal. Him going to the Cardinals. I don't really know where the Cardinals stand at this point in the NL Central. I still think that the Cubs are very, very good. I think that obviously we saw the Brewers win the wild card game 2 years ago. They still have a guy who contends for MVP every single season in Christian Yelich. The Reds were a team that a lot of people talked about at the beginning of last season as far as dark horse contenders, if they could get something going. And that's a 3-0 pitch to Castellanos going deep left field.
Oh, jeez.
And that's a home run.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
I think the Central is good, obviously, other than the Pirates, because they have, I think, on their roster, they're paying less money to every single player on their roster than the Yankees are paying to Garrett Cole by himself. So they don't really have a lot to compete with. But, I think it's interesting, and I think it makes the Cardinals a lot better. And you just question what the Rockies are doing because they're in a division that's getting very, very good as well, and has been very good for a while with obviously the Dodgers in there. The Diamondbacks are a team that could compete in any given season. The Giants have a lot of young guys that are able to compete. Well, they're not really ready to compete now, but they're a team that's going to be good in probably 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of question marks in the NL West, but the Central got a lot better as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's it makes sense to question what these teams are doing, and I did the same thing. And then I went to the Google bar and I searched MLB profits by team 2020. And depending on who you trust, it looks like Major League Baseball teams lost quite a bit of cash last year. And I think the fact that Nolan Arenado is on the move is just reflective of the economic uncertainty in this country right now. And, well, I don't know about unfortunately, but billionaires are not, they're not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to affect them too. So I don't know if it makes sense for the Rockies to pay someone like that when they don't know they're going to be making a lot of money. I know it makes sense for anybody to be paying that kind of money for a huge free agent. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of contracts in this free agency that aren't maybe as big as we thought they were. I think it all depends on when we're going to be able to get this virus under control. And, then we can start thinking about bigger contracts for players. But right now, I think that there's just so much uncertainty as to how many fans will be allowed next year, TV deals, things like that, that the Rockies don't think they can afford it. We see it too, like in Cleveland. They got rid of all their stars. They don't think they can afford it. The Red Sox got rid of Mookie Betts. I just think that it's so uncertain for these owners that this is what they're turning to.
Yeah, and you mentioned the revenue loss, and it sort of segues into our next point. Or our next topic, I should say. And a recap again, Arenado to the Cardinals. Huge deal that we just all lambasted the Rockies on, but Dan bringing up pretty much profit, which matters in this country. And it mattered a lot this week for one Steve Cohen. He's the owner of the New York Mets, and he's not on Twitter anymore. He was praised for his usage of Twitter. The fact he could connect with fans and hear him out, and people were going back and forth with him in terms of stuff that was related to baseball. But Cohen, who's very, finger triggers there, very happy with it, he got himself in a spat this week with Barstool founder Dave Portnoy. That was about the fact that this week, a bunch of people on Reddit decided to put a lot of money into GameStop stock, and it rose. And billionaire hedge funds lost a lot of money because they were intentionally going to profit off of GameStop stock plummeting. It was a reverse of course. Cohen tweeted out, I want to say it was playful, but just, hey, all you stock jockeys out there, pretty much, keep it up. And that it was a rough day on Twitter because there's probably people going at Cohen because he's someone who owns a hedge fund and benefits off this for the last couple of years. And it's come to light for a lot of people how people abuse the stock market and how easily it could be manipulated by certain people. So he went back and forth with Dave Portnoy, and you could think what you want on Dave Portnoy. I'm not going to tell you how to think, but it was funny, I think, watching these both go at it. And no matter what Cohen said, in my opinion, there are people that are going to agree with Portnoy no matter what, and there's people who don't like Steve Cohen. So it was a lose-lose situation for him to get in. It resulted in him taking a break from Twitter. He put out a statement saying that he and his family have received personal threats, which we don't want to see, but could have been caused by maybe people realizing how he makes his money or how easy the manipulation on the stock market could be. And maybe also people annoyed that he argued with Dave Portnoy. But because of it, he's off Twitter now. His Twitter account was deleted. And for him, it's not a great optic no matter how you look at it. Not only did he lose a lot of money because of these Reddit people, he's now been pretty much railroaded off Twitter by Dave Portnoy, which doesn't look good in any sense of the phrase. I know Portnoy has 2 million followers, but you're a billionaire and you're the owner of a professional sports organization. Not a great look. And also this, in terms of a baseball perspective. Trevor Bauer, who the Mets might sign and who are interested in, is a Twitter loose cannon. So if Steve Cohen is asked in a press conference, hey, Stevie, you think Trevor Bauer is a good signing for your team? You've talked about how toxic social media is, and that's a reason you're off and you don't want to get into these spats, and that's a reason. Trevor Bauer gets in spats all the time. So you're going to bring this guy in knowing this? Steve, if Twitter isn't so bad, why aren't you on it right now? Those are legitimate questions. That's not attacking. That's legitimate questions that the New York media outlets are going to ask Steve Cohen the next time he makes a public appearance, which is bound to happen sometime, if they decide to go get Trevor Bauer. And that point was brought by Ken Davidoff in the New York Post, and it's a legitimate one. How could he defend Trevor Bauer's signing in terms of Bauer's Twitter antics at all? That's something Sandy Alderson's going to have to deal with. It's just how it's going to have to happen. And you look at this from a whole lens perspective. Cohen, I think, pretty much dug his own coffin in a way, or dug his own grave, saying that to Portnoy in a response that, hey, we're all just trying to make a living. Which is true, but you lost all this money in GameStop, Steve Cohen. Your living's pretty good right now. I'm not saying you didn't lose money. I know you did. But your living's okay. I think tomorrow the living that you made is still solidified for the most part. So all around, I think no matter how you look at it, Steve Cohen's in a negative light. Some people have been looking into this too much where he could go to jail possibly or give up the Mets. That's a stretch. We have to see when this unfolds. But Brennan, I think this was funny. Dan, I want your thoughts on this too, especially one, we could talk about Cohen, and two, just how the people this week, that's hilarious. Could be maybe the MVP of the week. I'm going in a different direction, but definitely giving them a shout out. But this whole Steve Cohen situation, not good on the Mets, and they really can't get any stability in their ownership.
So there's a lot of takeaways here, kids. We should be a Sesame Street special. It really should. First of all, never engage with Dave Portnoy, okay? Whenever that little man sexist pig opens his... I will be a Walmart greeter before I work for Barstool. I hope he hears that. Why would you even talk to him, Steve Cohen? You're the owner of an MLB team. Why are you engaging with this fraud? I don't know why you would argue with him. Second of all, I read this New York Post article a little bit while you were, describing, because I wasn't really familiar with this whole thing. This is like exhausting journalism. Like, why are we covering this? Like, this so, like, it makes me want to throw up a little bit in my mouth.
Yeah.
Like the back and forth between these two. I know. Look at that. Oh my God. If Steve Cohen lost money, I guess I feel bad for him, but I don't feel bad for billionaires in Wall Street. Why would I ever do that? I guess this is the only instance where I will side with Portnoy that, like, shut up Steve Cohen. But, like, also, like, not from Dave Portnoy, man. He's on Fox News all the time. You're telling me you're not part of the machine, Dave Portnoy? I mean, hypocrisy makes the world go around. It really does. But, like, this is, like, such an exhausting story. It really is. There's a lot of things that could have been done better. The first one is do not talk to Dave Portnoy under any circumstance, please.
All right. Oh, the Mets. God, it's so funny because every time that you think the Mets maybe won't be little brother this season, obviously it's tough to share a media market, and the Yankees are the most primed historical franchise, not just in baseball, but in any sport. And you sit here and you look at the Mets and you go, they have the richest owner in baseball. Baseball has no luxury tax. This guy will pay the extra money if he wants to get the stars. They go out, they trade for Francisco Lindor, and then your general manager sends dick pics to a reporter, and then your owner, who this guy has been praised. He's the most He's the most transparent owner. He's on Twitter. He interacts with fans. He takes suggestions for people that fans think the Mets should go out and sign as free agents. He leaves Twitter because he got bullied by a guy and his followers who run a media company. Are you kidding me? God, it's so funny. They were so close to not being little brother in New York this season. The Yankees they re-signed LeMahieu, they signed Kluber, they trade for Talion. That's great. That's basic Yankee stuff. The Mets go out, they make these monster moves, and then it all comes crumbling down 2 weeks later, and we sit back and we think, oh, the Mets will never stop being the Mets. It's hilarious. I think that the fact that people, not just Mets fans, but I agree. Like, I think for an owner to be as transparent as he was and interact with his fan base as much as he did is awesome. I love it. I think that it's great. But if you're going to do that, you have to stick through the bad parts as well. You can't just sit there and take, love from your fans and interact with the fans and listen to free agency advice from the people who follow the team. And then when people start to criticize you, not just for the decisions that you make on the baseball side of things, but for being a billionaire hedge fund investor who lost a little bit of money in this GameStop thing, which, side note, I think is awesome. Obviously all for the little guy, as I am a little guy myself. This is the first time I've ever put money into the stock market, and I think I might stop gambling as much as I do and instead go into gambling on the stock market because that seems a little safer. But no, it's awesome. But if you're going to be that guy who's a public figure, not just in the sports world, but in the economics world as well, you have to be able to take criticism, and to just delete your Twitter account is super soft. As people on one of my favorite TV shows, Letterkenny, which is a great watch and I recommend for anyone interested in Canadian comedy television, they would call it 10-ply. 10-ply is this move by Steve Cohen. Get a little backbone, I guess. And just to prove that I'm not the ultimate Mets hater, I took this picture off my wall. The wall back there is a wall of pictures of me and my family visiting every major league stadium. I think we're at 16 at this point. And we have visited Citi Field. There's me right there. Proof that I'm not the ultimate Mets hater. And also, this is Shane Robinson. So go look him up after the show because I think that's interesting. The man batted, he had 200 average with 3 home runs and 4 ribbies. So 3 solo shots for him. But no, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're going to be on Twitter and you're going to be visible through the bad stuff as well. Don't just quit.
Yep, and maybe not get in arguments with people. And, you got to use it sparingly. And that's the problem with being this open and engaging guy, which was originally praised and now has led to what he chose, but his downfall in terms of going off Twitter. Now, I don't know how to follow this with because we're doing the MVP of the week now, but there has been things we couldn't even say if we were on radio. Thank goodness we're on YouTube, and people mentioned that I didn't think we were going to mention today. It has been a wild show. Dan, start, I think, with the MVP of the week. This has been a week, and I said it at the top. I think we all pretty much gave the Reddit stock people their praise. If that's your MVP of the week, that's great. I think they would be my co-MVP of the week. But Dan, you'll start our MVP of the week for this week.
Yeah, I was gonna just say Reddit, the entire website of Reddit. Thank you so much. That's such a great week. I've been enjoying it so much. Yeah, it's been a weird week, like you said. And other than the brick and mortar GameStop stores that need to be recognized, I think that my MVP this week has to be the New York Knicks because for some reason, I think they're good. And I'm still I think because I have a lot of Knicks fans friends who text me and they're like, hey, I've been watching the Knicks. And I'm like, well, no. But then I started doing it because, they're winning. So I had to see this for myself. And, Emmanuel Quickly and Tom Thibodeau, they've really been doing a great job this year for the Knicks. And at first I was so confused. I was like, there's no way that this team is good. It doesn't make any sense to me. But the Knicks are getting better, I guess I can say, which is so weird to say. But this is the week that I realized that they are actually getting better. So I feel like they deserve my MVP for finally taking some – we'll see if it lasts – but finally taking some steps in the right direction.
They're, for the first time in a while, the best team right now that plays at Madison Square Garden, which hasn't been the case in a very long time. So the Knicks are Dan's MVP of the week. My MVP of the week is a specific NBA player, and this happened last night. It is Rodney McGruder. I love this man. He decided, Golden State, first off, he's a Pistons point guard. Golden State Warriors that beat the Detroit Pistons 118-91 last night. And McGruder, I can't say what he said because I don't know, but apparently he was trash talking and going back and forth with some Golden State players on the court. I don't know if it got personal. I don't want to praise him if it did, but I don't think it did. I think he was just trying to get under the Warriors' skin. Obviously, no effect because they rolled the Pistons. But it brought some pretty great reactions out of Draymond Green and Klay Thompson specifically. Thompson was a guest on commentary for the Warriors for that game. And when McGruder was dapping up after a little scuffle at the end of the game, dapping up some of the players, Klay Thompson said something to the effect that he's going to be out of the league soon. Who cares about him? He's a fake tough guy, which really not professional when you're at commentary. And the play-by-play guy was like, oh, okay. Maybe not say that. That was funny. And then you can go on Twitter and you could find Draymond Green. He had probably a minute and 50 rant on this guy. Not safe for work, expletives thrown around. Not that you're not getting it here already with one already mentioned, but it was insane. For a press conference, Draymond just holding the mic, going off on this poor guy. I'm a big Rodney McGruder fan now. If he got this reaction out of the Golden State Warriors, that's hilarious to me. This guy was a 2016 G League champion. I did a little research, and last year averaged 3.9 points per game. So he means business. He was a member of the Miami Heat from 2016 to 19, and now a Detroit Piston. Rodney McGruder, shooting guard. He was undrafted in 2013. This guy's 29 years old, and I'm just hearing of him. He is my MVP of the week. It's hilarious. You could follow that story. We're not going to go too in-depth on it, but I thought he was hilarious. And, of course, co-MVP, what happened in the stock market this week with especially the people on Reddit. Brennan, your MVP of the week.
I actually wrote down a few. So the first one is Messi's contract, because this man, his contract wasn't supposed to come out, first of all, and he's actually suing the guy that released the contract details, but he's making over what would be, I think, $6.5 million to play in the Premier League this year. The second one is burner accounts. We've seen it a lot in the NBA. We had a golf burner account get released yesterday. Shoot, I forgot who it was. Hold on. Let me quickly go back to ESPN because it's one of their, on the little side, they got like the highlights of the day or whatever. Justin Reed. Justin Reed's burner account was found yesterday. He tweeted something on his account on accident that was word for word the same thing that a burner account tweeted, and I think that's hilarious because golf, really? You're going to have burner accounts in golf? Come on. The third one is karate. I just started watching Cobra Kai, and I love it. I absolutely love it, and I think karate's making a comeback. I'm not going to do it, but I think a lot of people will. And the fourth one, my true MVP of the week is University of Wisconsin Whitewater offensive lineman Quinn Menares. The man is an absolute stud. We're all D3 guys. We go to a D3 school. University of Wisconsin Whitewater is D3. They're one of the best teams in Division III, consistently ranked in the top 10. He got a Reese's Senior Bowl invite. He was one of the last guys. He was a fill-in spot, Senior Bowl invite. He won the MVP for the offensive side of the ball for the national team. The teams were named American and National. Whatever. He was the MVP in the offensive ball for the national team. He was the only player, and I love when linemen do this. Linemen did this when I was in high school. They do it in college all the time. They roll their pads up they roll their jersey up underneath their pad and just let the gut hang out. And it's always the lineman. No one wants to see it, but it's absolutely incredible when they do it. This man dominated Division I interior offensive lineman. He's a guard, so he was going against D tackles, nose tackles, and then occasionally went against the D end in drills. He dominated the entire week. He's probably going to get drafted at this point. I don't think he was a guy that a lot of people were looking at, but he's one of a few offensive linemen from Division III who looks like they're going to get drafted. Obviously, Ali Marpet is the left guard for the now playing in the Super Bowl Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He went to Hobart. They play, I think, once a year, so familiar with that. But I love when D3 guys get a chance. He got a chance. He took advantage of it, and he was the highlight of the Reese's Senior Bowl this week. which is really the only time that teams are going to have to evaluate players leading up to the draft.
Yeah, one last note, by the way, on the Senior Bowl. Brennan, tell us the quarterback, who it is, because the Giants in the last 3 drafts have drafted, or maybe the 3 before last one, but they always draft the Senior Bowl MVP. So whoever that quarterback is probably going to be the 4th-round pick of the Giants. So I'd like to know a little background on him. And I think he plays for the Aggies, right? So you know a little on him.
He does, yes. Texas A&M quarterback Kellen Mond. Not one of the guys that is projected to go in the first round. Well, there were guys, those guys were there. I mean, Mac Jones went and threw the ball around quite a bit. But Kellen Mond, yes, will be the next starting quarterback of the New York Giants. So keep that in mind.
Draft pick of the New York Giants, not starter, backup. He's the next Davis Webb, Kyle Lauletta, not Daniel Jones. Backup. We're 3rd stringer, but we're glad to have him aboard because that's going to happen. And you think, oh, I'm Nostradamus. Just go through the Senior Bowl MVPs. Gettleman loves them for some reason, and like every game, the MVP is always a quarterback, which even in the Senior Bowl and the Super Bowl, that's how it unfolds. All right, so that was where our MVPs of the week, and this has just been a wild show. So I think the perfect way to end it, because there isn't a lot of games today in terms of one specific sport. Usually this last 10 minutes or so is slotted for our NFL game picks. No NFL games this week. You have the Pro Bowl, but it's not going to be a game. It's going to be a montage of highlights and interviews and things of the like. They're going to have fun with it, but it's not a traditional game. And there's a lot happening in different sports. You got a slate of NBA games, NHL games. You have it. But we decided to pick an event and give our predictions on. We don't get a lot of time to talk about this, but today is the Royal Rumble. So why not, in a week like this, give our Royal Rumble picks, the men's Royal Rumble, the women's Royal Rumble. We're not going to do the whole card. Our wrestling knowledge varies. I think Brendan and I follow it to a T, where Dan will just watch it if it's on, but doesn't understand it that much. I think I've hit the nail on the head on that. But we're going to give you our thoughts anyway. I think it's a fun way to close out the show. And we'll start with the men's and then I guess go to the women's Royal Rumble. For the men's Royal Rumble, there's a lot of people you could pick. And what's fun about this is that you can go to any odds website and there's odds on who will win this. It's technically a scripted show. So it's sort of like saying, oh, who's going to be the next person who breaks up on The Office, right? But there's an athletic component to it. So, of course, there's odds on it and people just predicting the storyline. There's a lot of names out there. Maybe Goldberg, because he's fighting in a title match, makes an appearance. Maybe Brock Lesnar, who's been off the shelf, makes an appearance. Edge, who might be known from our day when we first started watching wrestling. He was the top guy. He's back. But my pick is Braun Strowman. This guy's massive. He's like 6'11", and he's jacked. He scares me, and he was wrestling in Tampa, and I was here in New York. The guy is a freak. He returns 2 days ago on Friday Night SmackDown and made his appearance and pretty much said to everyone, I'm in the Rumble. This is happening. And I was like, oh boy, because he is going to make an impact, and I think he wins it. And the winner of the Rumble will fight at WrestleMania for a title. So I'm thinking it's going to be Braun Strowman on the men's side. Dan's just laughing at this. I think I have to explain it. Women's now, of recent years, WWE has been more inclusive, and there's a lot of talented women's wrestlers. So with all that talent, you have a Rumble. And there are a lot of people who you can go. It's, I think, wide open in terms of who they're going to go with and who's going to win it, just because there's not a lot of, I would say, good storylines to pretty much decipher who it is. It's not predictable, which is a good thing. I think the Women's Royal Rumble winner is going to be Bianca Belair. She has a rocket strapped to her. You want to say GameStop's going to the moon? She's going to the moon. She is the next best thing for WWE in their women's division. She is very entertaining, and I think they give her the win. Why not? She's young, and she could wrestle someone at WrestleMania who's a known commodity, and it could, I think, be a really exciting match that draws in a lot of viewers. So those are my picks. There's not a lot of basis on it. Strowman probably is a middle of the pack in terms of favorite, while Bianca Belair is probably the odds-on favorite or very close to that. So, you know, maybe not unpredictability in my predictions, but that's who I think. And again, this is all just who we think that people think will win. It's not like, believe me, if this was real, it'd be Braun Strowman. But you know, what makes wrestling fun is its unpredictability of it. Brennan, you'll go next. Don't pick Pat McAfee. He's not going to make an appearance. Sorry.
Okay. Time out.
Uh-oh.
was going to bring up McAfee, but not for the reason that you think.
Mm-hmm.
Not for the reason you think. I'm a huge fan of the Pat McAfee show. If you don't know this, I think that he is going to be the future of the sports media industry, and I think the things he does are awesome. John doesn't agree with me, so we leave it behind.
I just think to cut you off. He's good.
We're talking about wrestling, John. We're talking about wrestling.
Okay, finish. Then I'll attack you on McAfee.
That being said, I have paid close attention to NXT as of late because McAfee has been a guest on NXT, and he has been a guy who has brought a lot of attention to that area of the WWE. I think the winner of this year's Royal Rumble will be Keith Lee. He was the reigning NXT champion until he got drafted just a month or two ago. I forget whether he went to SmackDown or Raw. It doesn't matter. He's sitting at 7-1 odds right now to win the Royal Rumble. I think it would be a great storyline for him to come from NXT and win the match. So I like Keith Lee to win. As far as the women's, I know much less about that. So I'm going to go with one of the few names that I actually know, and I'm going to say Ronda Rousey will win the women's match. She has not been announced as a competitor, but I think she makes a surprise appearance, and I think that she wins it. If you couldn't tell, I don't know a lot about wrestling, and what I do know has to do with Pat McAfee. So keep that in mind. Don't bet with me.
By the way, Dan, before you step in, I don't not like McAfee. I just think he started at Barstool and then he went independent because he realized he could. He is what a couple shows on Barstool are. I'm not saying he's not very talented. I'm just saying you could find the same thing on a couple of Barstool shows in terms of personalities like that. Believe me, he's made the most of his talent. He's gotten on game day somehow. He's a part of WWE NXT even though he's not a trained wrestler. So I props all to him. I don't hate him.
Good.
Yeah, I don't hate him. I just, if he stayed at Barstool, he'd be doing the same thing. But that's my point on it. Dan, I'm sure you'll give us a very insightful Royal Rumble pick.
When you're an odds shark like myself, it's obvious. I think that who I want to win and who I think will win means absolutely nothing because I think professional wrestling is hilarious and amazing, and I don't have a lot of knowledge about it. I really hope Daniel Bryan wins because I remember he used to like slap food out of people's hands, like in like waiting in line before his matches, and I think that's hilarious. And on oddshark.com, all right, I'll get back to what I was going to say in a second. But Daniel Bryan is plus 110 to win it right now. That's the favorite. I really hope Conor McGregor wins. He's plus 20,000, and Vince McMahon is plus 50,000. So keep that in mind, which is hilarious. I hope Daniel Bryan wins because I like that he slaps food out of people's hands. In the women's side, I've been looking up stuff on Bianca Belair. I've never heard of her before. I hope she wins, because she's the favorite, and I've never heard of her, and I think that would be really interesting. What I also want to bring up is why another reason you should go to oddshark.com is they also have Bachelor betting ads. Betting odds. And right now, will Matt James marry the recipient of the final rose? No is minus 600. And will he marry the first runner-up? Is minus 500.
Wow.
Well, actually, no is minus 500 for first marriage. I made that mistake. But the fact that he won't marry the person with the final rose, I think is hilarious on this website. And if that becomes true, I think you should go here for your wrestling odds and take Daniel Bryan and Bianca Belair.
Imagine having odds on your love life. Imagine someone makes odds on your love life. That hilarious to me. And poor Matt James. But I think that's the perfect note to end on for today's episode. Next week will be a lot more football focused, and it'll be our Super Bowl preview show. How the semantics of it's going to work will be interesting because we're all going to be in person with each other for the first time. So how it looks will be interesting, but we will give you a Super Bowl preview show covering all things, and we're very excited to do it. And then hopefully returning soon, we get to be in studio doing this show as well and not in this Zoom capacity. So for Brennan Miller and Dan Pizzanti, I'm John Vicari. This has been the MVP Show.